So I want to begin with just doing a little quick exercise. I did this several years ago, so some of you may have done it. If you know where it's leading, just let it be. Let everyone else experience it. And the exercise comes from a Buddhist teacher called Genpo Roshi. It's called Big Mind, Big Heart exercise. And he got a big part of this exercise from improv, an improv group. In order to do improv well, we need to access different voices in ourselves. So he took that exercise and then he included the spiritual aspect. So the way it works is you have a guide. We're not going to do it all now because it goes for like over an hour, so this is just a summary. So the guide will say, always starts with the controller in us, the voice that the ego wants to control. So we have to start with that because if the ego doesn't say, yes, I'm willing, the exercise is mute. So he'll say, for instance, okay, I'm speaking to the controller in you, and then he asks the person to speak from that place, and he'll talk to it, and he'll say, do I have permission to do this exercise? And the controller might say, is this going to be harmful to me in any way? No, it's not going to be harmful. So they'll have their conversation. And then what he'll ask is anytime he wants us to switch the voice from within, because remember, all these voices are inside of us, he just asks the person to change their body language a little, to access, just to recognize, have a physical correspondence with, okay, I'm changing voices. So then he'll ask to talk to the inner innocent child, the bratty child, the responsible adult, all the different voices that we have going on in our head, the critic. So that's the human aspect, and then he does that for a while so we can get in touch with all these voices. Then he brings in the spiritual piece. Because we haven't been doing this is just a summary. I'm not going to ask us to change voices. I'm just going to have the room be two different voices, but they're all inside of us. So from this side over is going to be one voice, and this side over will be the other voice. And it's just to say, what would you say? What part of you how would you talk? So on this side of the room, we're tuning in with the voice that is the seeker, that part of you that is seeking enlightenment. So what are some kind of things that you might say as someone who is seeking enlightenment, a wakefulness, oneness with God? What are some things that you might say? What was that? Presence? You're seeking presence. You're seeking to be present. Yeah. What's next? Great. Yes, I'm seeking to evolve and improve myself. Yes. Why am I seeking to? Well, if you're seeking, yeah, but that why could be, and also I'm afraid that I might not get enlightened. I'm seeking it, but part of with seeking is a fear that we might not get it. Those are all great. So this side is that part of us that's already enlightened, that isn't seeking enlightenment, but already is that. So what kind of things would you say as from the place of enlightenment? What would enlightenment say within us? What are some kind of things? What was that?
Have you seen my glasses?
Bliss. I'm bliss. Life is wonderful. Let go and let God, because I'm that life right now. Yes. Be love. I am love. I am a clear channel. I am what? I am so blessed. So we see a little bit of the difference, right, between the enlightened state and the seeking state. So which place is where's God in this? You guys are so on it. That's why you're here. It's all of it. It's the seeking mind. It's that part of us that's seeking as well as that part of us that's enlightened. It's all the different voices that we have. It's all God. And that's really the title of today's talk, is the whole story. We've been talking a lot about this summer, but talking about different spiritual practices that we can do all day long to keep us conscious of who and what we really are. So in July, we talked a bit about having a mantra or a prayer that we're saying constantly. And I used just a simple mantra, I am, or you can say I am love. And just by saying that, intending to say that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I likened it to the rock hammer that Andy Dufresne uses in the Shawshank Redemption. You just keep saying it, and it's like that little tiny rock hammer digging away at that thick wall of the prison, but if we keep at it, we move closer and closer to our total freedom. And then this month we've been talking about the power of blessing. Blessing everything, every time, all the time, and everyone, regardless of condition, regardless of circumstance, regardless of appearance. We bless them. We bless your joy. We bless your peace. We bless ourselves. And we bless whatever we feel might be missing. If they seem really harsh, I bless a gentle heart in you. If they're being hard on themselves, I find myself blessing people a lot and having to have a soft heart, because I find people are very hard on themselves or other people, so I bless you with a soft heart. I bless myself with a soft heart. Anything we want to bless out there, we become. And this wonderful book, The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervan, he just has example of people who've been practicing this and seeing sometimes immediate results, sometimes the results are much later, but how it begins to transform us inside by doing these blessings. And for those of you who are last week, you might be doing the blue bracelet of working on not complaining for 21 days, which is fun. My only challenge with that is the focus is on what you're not doing versus what I like the blessing, because it's what we are doing. It's what we put our attention on increases. So I really look forward to the blessing, being for something and against nothing. But these are all practices to keep us as in tune and align us with Spirit as much as we possibly can. Now, I'd like to ask who in this room, and I'm just going to do by hands, has your spiritual journey, your journey of awakening. I'm not going to say the number one thing, because it may be your number one thing, but your child or your family might be. So in the top three, who in this room would you say your spiritual awakening is of the top three most important thing in your life for the last year? Like you're seeking that is the number, at least the top three thing of your life, most important thing. Yeah, so pretty much everybody. That's why we're all here together. I'm so glad we're here. We're all in the same room. Of those of you who raise your hands, how many of you would say that this desire to become spiritually awake, that you are consciously on a spiritual journey of awakening, you've been on for 5 years? In a very top three. So still most of you. What about 10 years? How many of you have been doing it 10 years? It's been a conscious practice for you. So about 10, so it's okay. What about 20 years? We have a deep room. That's why y'all know everything. That's a lot of you. A lot of you. And what about 30 years? Nice. All right, anyone 40 years?
Not that old.
That's fantastic. Jerry said I'm not that old. So what I want to ask those people who've been doing these spiritual practices on the spiritual journey for 20 years and more, have you seen improvement in your life since you've been on the spiritual journey? Okay. Has anyone, especially those who've been on it really long, has anyone achieved perfection where you stay in a constant state of God enlightenment the entire time? I really wanted to see if someone was going to raise their hand. If you have, we are all human, right? And so as much as these practices are amazing and wonderful, the fact is trying to say them all the time, being blessed in blessing all the time, saying our prayer mantra all the time, being in that God state of consciousness where we've moved beyond duality, beyond the world of appearances, that we are living first and foremost from that highest state of consciousness all of the time. It's a very, very difficult thing. The reason why Earth is here is because there's all this energy, and we have our own stuff to work out, and these blocks that come through. So we have to be gentle on ourselves. As we're talking about the whole story, God is just as much within us. The divine love is within us, even when we're not doing it. And we have to remember that. When we're not doing our spiritual practices, we're not being bad people. And that's a really important thing I've noticed on this journey is I think we go back to an old teaching of the punishment and reward. That if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, or we're falling short, we beat ourselves up, we think that we've lessened, and somehow we feel like we therefore do not deserve some sort of reward. I go to the story of the prodigal son. And I don't want to make the assumption that everybody here knows the story of the prodigal son, so I'm going to tell the story, but just because it's for fun, I'm going to make it switch genders. I don't think it changes the content of the story. So if it changed the content, I wouldn't switch genders, but I think it doesn't, so let's play a little. So the mother has a very wealthy mother who has great wealth, has 2 daughters, and they live at home. The elder daughter does everything right. The younger daughter's getting a bit antsy, and she feels like the elder daughter might get all the money because she's the eldest. So she wants her trust fund now. She doesn't want to wait. So she asks for her trust fund, and then she leaves, and she goes off to have fun with her trust fund. Now, we can do that. We're all born with gifts and talents and personality gems, and we go off into the world, and we are very competent in many things. We have many of our talents and gifts and skills, so we're off in the world doing our thing with all this, and we've cut ourselves off from the source. We don't need the source because we have our trust fund. We have our gifts. We have our talents. At one point, however, the daughter has such a good time and is spending and having the time of her life, not being responsible or a good steward, and therefore the money dissolves and she loses everything, and she's competing with pigs for food. And she realizes that actually the servants of her mother are eating better than she is. So in misery, she goes back. There comes a time in our life where we realize we have a lot of skills, but we don't have all the skills. Life can get really overwhelming. And that trying to live on our own, with our own, yes, we do have gifts and talents, but trying to do it all on our own, we're going to get depleted. We're going to get exhausted because we've cut ourselves off from the source of those gifts and those talents. So when we recognize that, that's when we start making our journey back to the divine presence within us. So she goes back to the divine mother, ashamed, embarrassed, knowing that that she had been given all these gifts and she completely messed it up. And mother, when the mother sees her, goes running out to her and just showers her in love. She doesn't say, well, finally you came to your senses, right? She doesn't say anything sort of condescending or sarcastic or it's about time. Why did you do that? No judgment at all. Nothing but pure, unconditional, unlimited love surrounds the prodigal daughter. And then the elder sister comes out, and the elder sister says, and they're going to throw her a feast and a party, and the elder sister says, I've been here the whole time. How come you've never done this for me? And the mother says, well, you've always had access to it. You've been here the whole time. Our prodigal daughter left. You've been here. For me, the way I interpret the elder sister is that the elder sister was doing everything right. She was the dutiful daughter. She stayed because she was supposed to stay. She was doing all of her spiritual practices right. She showed up. She did them every day. She didn't miss a day with her spiritual practices. She followed them to the letter of the law, but she totally forgot the spirit of why she was doing it. So there was an element of, if I do everything my mother wants, I'm staying here, I'm being the good child, I'm doing all my spiritual practices, I'm doing everything right, because I want to get a reward from my mother, she's missed the point. And if I don't do it, I'm going to get punished, and I'll be the bad daughter like the prodigal daughter. So I want to be the good daughter. I don't want to be punished. I want to get all the good stuff. So she's doing everything right to get a reward. What she misses is the idea is that the love already exists. There's no more reward to be given because all the love in the universe has already been given. In this room, right now, in this moment, is all the love that has ever been, ever has been, ever will be. There's no more love in the universe than there is right here and right now in this room. We just need to open ourselves and to accept it, to see it, to feel it, and to know it. So we do the spiritual practices not to get a reward that hasn't been given. We're not doing spiritual practices to earn something. We're doing the spiritual practices to open ourselves to that love which is already given. We want to do the spiritual practices because we want to actually feel this love that already exists, that has never judged us, that has never harmed us, that is never punishing us, that doesn't need to reward us because it's all already been given. Do we see the difference of how we're doing our spiritual practices. We're doing it out of joy, out of love, to experience all the love that has already been there, not to get the reward. So for me, we're all, or at least I experience myself as a prodigal daughter quite often. It's not a one-time event. I experience it every time, even when I do my spiritual practices, but I'm not fully present, or if I go and forget to do, for me, that I'm working on the prayer without ceasing, and I fail constantly. All the time. I just completely forget. It amazes me how easily I forget. The prodigal daughters, every time I remember, it's like I'm coming home. In that moment, I've just remembered, I've come home. I don't need to spend hours and hours repenting and asking for forgiveness. It's all already given. I think of Rumi, who says, I was going to memorize the quote, and I didn't, sorry. So one of my favorite quotes, too, "Wanderer, wanderer, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, it doesn't matter. Come join the caravan. We are not a caravan of despair. We are always accepted. It doesn't matter how many times we break those promises." I think of Brother Lawrence. He wrote a book called Practicing the Presence. It's a very small, thin book, and he's working on praying without ceasing. And what I love about him, and he doesn't go on and on about it because he just accepts it, is that every night he recognizes all the times he wasn't praying without ceasing. And he goes, oh yeah, and I knew I was forgiven, so I just completely accepted all that love and started the next day fully in love. Like, he didn't struggle with receiving the forgiveness. And I think that's really important. I heard someone say, who's been doing a lot of spiritual practices, that for them, the mother of all spiritual practices was returning to spiritual practices after you've stopped. So let's say you're doing them, and then you stop for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then you're sort of fighting against inertia to start them up again. But I also think in the back of our head, because we live in race consciousness and we've had different trainings and there's different ideas, there's a sense of guilt. I just totally let it go for 3 or 4 weeks or however long, and so by returning and becoming conscious again, we can there's a part of us that might be judging that person of us for the last 3 or 4 weeks or 3 months, I don't know, however long you may have gone without practicing, is judging ourselves and saying, I was a bad person, I screwed up, and somehow we little bit believe that God's judging us. When I meet with people, I'm amazed as we talk, and because we're human and we're living in collective consciousness, that if we really dig down, there is this little fear that God's judging us, that God's blaming us for not living up to our ideals. And so we need to keep reminding ourselves that's not who God is. That's not what love is. Love is never, ever, ever, ever judging us, ever. And the more we tune into that, the more we can return effortlessly over and over and over and over to the practices that we forgot, because we're not beating ourselves up. We're not going back with a lot of shame and guilt and judgment. That we just accept forgiveness immediately, just as when the prodigal daughter returns, the mother doesn't say, okay, let me hear how repentant you are. She didn't ask the daughter anything. She just loved her completely, without any words, without any explanation, without any excuses, not with her beating herself up, nothing. She just immediately, in that moment, I'm so glad you're home, I love you. And to me, that is what Spirit is saying to us, all of the divine presence. I love you, I'm so glad you're home. Welcome home, welcome home, welcome home. Every time we remember, throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, welcome home, welcome home. That's the whole story. Because even when we forget, we're still in Spirit. That was the point of the beginning exercise. Even all those times throughout the day, the week, and the months that we forget, Spirit's still there. There's only one power and one presence. It's impossible to be outside of it. We are never outside of this love. The only thing is that we forget that we're in the love, but the love never stops. When we stop and we go unconscious, that doesn't mean love goes unconscious. That doesn't mean the divine goes unconscious. It's still completely conscious and still loving. So we never leave it, ever. No matter what state of mind we are in, we are always in it. We do the spiritual practices because it's just more joyful to remember to be in love than not in love. The final point I want to make comes from someone I heard this week. This week I was listening to a podcast on Plant Strong. It's my new thing. Change your thinking, change your life. So I'm listening to these podcasts on Plant Strong. They're really wonderful. And I was listening to an interview with what did he call himself? an ultra runner. So most of us have seen a marathon. If you've ever seen, I lived in Boston, so I remember watching them cross the finish line, and they'd be exhausted. They'd be like 26-something miles, and they get over that, and they're just exhausted. They've done so much training to get there, and then they have to recoup the next week or so. This gentleman wanted to beat the world record for running the Appalachian Trail, which is over 2,000 miles. So in order to do that, he had to run 50 miles a day. So not 26, which is a marathon, almost double of that, 50 miles a day, every day for 50 days. It's crazy. And it was hard. So his wife was his team member getting him fed, and because he didn't have much, and they just said he got dirtier and dirtier. And then they were describing him like on day 27, emaciated. There was like nothing left. And she said, and that was just, everyone was saying how horrible that was, and that was just the beginning of how hard it was. And just the mentalness of having to get up every day and run 50 miles, get barely any sleep and get up and run 50 miles. What got him through, what was a friend who also is an ultra runner or a long-distance runner, said you need a phrase that's going to keep you going. You got to keep it simple. And he said, so the phrase that he got was, this is who I am and this is what I do. He was too tired to think about anything else. He didn't have time to analyze. He didn't have time to think, well, maybe this isn't who I am. That's what we do in the luxury when we have lots of time. He didn't have time for that. This is who I am. This is what I do. And that's just what he told himself. It kept him focused on Mark. This is who I am. This is what I do. And so what we want to do is recognize that both when we're not praying and when we're praying, it's all God. And yet, who we are, what we want to be living, is a life of blessing. We want to see that which already exists. We want to see that we are blessed, we are loved everywhere, every time, all the time. We want to see the world that we live in is always blessed. We want to see with God's eyes, don't we? Isn't that who we are? So as the Lighthouse community, this is who we are and this is what we do. This is who we are. We are a blessing and we are blessed. This is what we do. We are a blessing and we bless. Wherever we go, whatever we're doing, no matter who we come in contact with, no matter what the situation and the circumstance, in our own world, in the American culture, in the world culture, climate change, all the stuff that's happening, this is what I am, this is who I am, and this is what I do. I am a blesser of the light. I am a revealer of heaven on earth. Every moment that I can remember, I bless. I bless myself, I bless others, I bless situations. Not just we, the power of the collective. We bless ourselves, we bless the situation, we bless the world out there, we bless, and we bless some more, and we bless some more. Because the more we do that, the kingdom of heaven is revealed. The infinite love intelligence of the universe, which is always here, it's here right now, and we want to see it. We are committed to seeing that. This is who we are, and this is what we do. This is what we do as individuals, this is what we do as a community, and that grows and grows, this collective energy. I love in reading this book, I finished the book, and this is full of stories of people who practice and how much it impacts the world. He talks about he works in Africa a lot, and the Senegalese, I don't know how to say that out loud, Senegalese, yeah. So they're very poor. They're one of the poorest people in the world, and he was working with them, and he said it was amazing to me that they would start all their meetings about how, thank you, Creator, for how blessed we are. And amazing things would start happening just to help them get through it. But to live in that time of blessing no matter what the situation, because as we heard in the reading today, it's all consciousness. Now, we've heard that in America, when we die, we can't take our toys with us, right? It's just the consciousness that we create. It's the same thing in poverty. It's the same thing when things are going bad. When we die, we take our consciousness with us. We don't take our poverty with us. All the stories that we have going on around us, whether we call them good or we call them bad, what matters is the consciousness within us, how we are responding to it, because that is what lasts. That is what is eternal, is the consciousness within us. The material situation is going to change. Anyone who's looked at history, it goes up and down, it has dark places, it has light places. That's this world, this earth that we're living, and it's changing faster and faster than it ever has in history. This place of stability is knowing the blessing that we are, the consciousness that we are, because that's what's eternal. We also want to help in the external world, and we want to do what we can to make it better, and we want to do it from a place of our consciousness. How we respond to the world is where all the power comes from, where our power to see that, in fact, no matter what's happening out there, the divine love never has left us, ever. It's always there, waiting for us to see it and to feel it with open arms. So with that, let us all go into prayer. And when there's going to be a moment in this prayer where I'm just going to go into silence, and in that time of silence, I just want you to, don't work at it, just whoever comes up, if it's a situation that comes up, people that come up, just let yourself bless. Bless abundantly and profusely whatever's showing up for yourself, thoughts that you're having, something immediate, something in the past, something in the future, something global, whatever come up, we're all going to join in the blessing. Before we do this, I'd like to ask someone to bring our prayer box. Would you do that, Ben? And we'll just bring it up, because we have a prayer box. We have practitioners. When you put a prayer in there, our practitioners will be praying for you all week long. So I just want to include those prayers that have been placed in there in our prayer work this morning. And I'd like our practitioners, these are people who are licensed within CSL, if you could just sort of stand on the outside and hold the blessings for us. Oh, thanks, Ben. Yeah, that'd be great. What? Yeah, the practitioners, the Centers for Spiritual Leadership Practitioners, CSL practitioners. Thank you. Are y'all ready? Are we ready to just blow out this roof in blessings? So when we open our eyes, we see the divine love that already exists. And not because we're making it happen. It already exists. So this prayer is about speaking out what already exists. That there is only love. There is no beginning and there is no end. It is birthless and it is deathless. It is absolute and it is unchanging. This love was before all time and space, and this love was the source of all creation. It is the source of everything that has ever been created. The galaxies upon galaxies and billions of stars to every atom and cell, microbiome. It is everything. This divine love is everything. It is in, through, and as all creation, and yet it is beyond all that creation. It is free, and yet it still is fully, completely within each and every one of us. It is all that I am. It is all that we are swimming in this oceanic love right here and right now. There is no way we can ever step out of that oceanic love. It fills us, the deepest love we've ever felt in our life. When a child was born, when we've fallen in love, when those times where our hearts just open and melts and softens and we feel the goodness of life, that's here right now, that same love, that same intensity of grace, of gentleness, of kindness. It swarms and fills us even now. That is who we are. That is what we are made in the image and likeness of. We have never been outside of it in our entire life, ever. It is who we are. It is the absolute truth of who we are. We are that consciousness here and now, in this moment and always. It does not come and it does not go. We are the infinite consciousness of pure, unconditional, unlimited love. And it is from and as this place we bless our beautiful Michelle Schmidt, knowing that her nerve endings are coming alive in healing and grace and ease, and though both her and Carl have the emotional and mental strength through this time of healing and regrouping. We give thanks for Lynn Plows as she blesses her mother, who's had brain surgery, and that Lynn and her sisters absolutely have the strength and the clarity to support her mother in her healing process. And even as we pray and hold these people in our community, I invite us now to, in this time of silence, to bless everyone who comes into our heart. Just let our hearts, bodies, and minds be full of blessing for everything. How grateful I am we are seeing beyond the masks, beyond the appearances. And we are seeing that which is real right here and right now. And that even as we have been blessing, we continue to bless as much as we can remember. We remember to bless throughout the rest of the service, through the rest of this morning, after conversations, after service, and the rest of our day, the rest of our week. We continue to return over and over to this incredible state and consciousness of blessing all that we are and all that life is. So we see, know, and feel that which is more real than the chairs in which we sit. How grateful I am for the goodness and the power and this love alive and awake of us, calling itself forth. It is deep calling unto deep and deep answering deep. We are that depth, and we have said yes to ourselves, and it is done here and now. The power of God has claimed itself as each of our own individual states of consciousness, and collectively we are impacting the world. How grateful I know that this is true. I know it is done. In deep abiding joy and everlasting peace, we release this word now, knowing that as it has been spoken by all of us, it is done. And so we say together now, and so it is. Amen and amen.
And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. 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 So